In the heart of the ancient world, there once stood a republic, a beacon of ambition, courage, and unparalleled influence. The Roman Republic was the pride of its citizens, a bold experiment in governance that balanced power across the Senate, magistrates, and the people. It expanded from a modest city-state to an empire that stretched from Spain to Asia Minor, becoming the very definition of might and civilization. But behind its facade of military success and architectural splendor, the Republic harbored a dark, festering reality. This is the story of how greed, avarice, and unchecked capitalism, propelled by a class of ruthless and insatiable elites, led Rome from the zenith of its power to the brink of ruin. It's a story of how wealth corrupts, and it holds a mirror to the dangers any civilization might face if it allows power to concentrate unchecked. Rome was founded on a structure of agrarian equality, where small landowners, the backbone of the Republic, worked their fields with pride. Yet, as Rome's conquests filled its coffers, a new elite class emerged. These elites, a fusion of old noble families and wealthy newcomers, saw land not as a means of sustenance but as a lucrative investment. They bought up vast tracts of conquered territory, often displacing small farmers and transforming the agricultural landscape into sprawling estates called latifundia. These estates were not worked by proud citizens, but by enslaved laborers captured in wars, a shift that began to sever the Republic's connection with its traditional values. As the Republic grew richer, the small farmer, the heart and soul of early Rome, began to suffer. War and military campaigns took these men away from their lands for years, and when they returned, they found themselves drowning in debt. Many were forced to sell their holdings to wealthy elites, unable to compete with the large estates that relied on the cheap labor of slaves. This wasn't an accident, it was a calculated design of the ruling classes. The Republic's elite knew that impoverished citizens were easily manipulated, and they enacted laws to make debt repayment nearly impossible. It was a vicious cycle. The rich got richer, the poor lost everything. The Republic's landlords weren't just capitalists, they were opportunists. They bought up land at a pittance, exploiting both the desperation of impoverished citizens and the spoils of Rome's imperialist campaigns. They took advantage of lax government oversight to consolidate holdings, gobbling up entire provinces. By eliminating the citizen farmer, they severed the bond that once bound the people to their republic. For these elites, the Republic was merely a vessel for profit. Its citizens were expendable assets in the machinery of their greed. Patriotism gave way to materialism, and loyalty to the state eroded as people saw their lives hollowed out by forces beyond their control. The conquered territories not only brought wealth but also a massive influx of slaves. These slaves became the backbone of the latifundia, providing a limitless source of labor that wealthy Romans exploited to maximize their profits. But this reliance on slavery had a dangerous downside. The once proud class of citizen farmers was replaced by a labor force with no allegiance to Rome. Slaves were often treated brutally, creating a volatile and resentful underclass. Slave uprisings, such as the famous revolt led by Spartacus, threatened the very stability of the Republic, yet the elites, blinded by greed, continued their practices, prioritizing profit over peace. As the plight of Rome's common people grew desperate, two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, dared to challenge the might of Rome's wealthy elite. They proposed agrarian reforms to redistribute land to dispossessed citizens, hoping to revive the Republic's agrarian base and restore power to the people. But their efforts were met with ruthless opposition. The Senate, composed of the wealthiest and most powerful men in Rome, saw the Gracchus' reforms as a threat to their dominance. The brothers were assassinated, and their deaths symbolized the Republic's transition from a state ruled by the people to one manipulated by an oligarchy of the rich. As Rome's citizens grew disillusioned, the military offered an escape, a path for fame and fortune for those who no longer had a place in civilian life. The new wealthy class of generals, men like Marius Sulla and later Julius Caesar, capitalized on this discontent. They recruited private armies from the displaced citizens, men who had little allegiance to Rome and everything to gain by following a powerful general. These armies served not the Republic but the ambitions of their commanders. The Republic was losing control of its own military, and with it the power that once protected its sovereignty. Economic inequality in the late Republic reached staggering heights. The wealth of the elite equaled that of entire provinces, and they flaunted it with decadent displays of opulence. Banquets, exotic animals, imported wines, and jewels from the East became symbols of wealth and status. In contrast, the urban poor lived in squalor, packed into overcrowded insulae, or apartment buildings prone to collapse and fire. Bread and circuses, a term immortalized in Rome, became the elite solution to keep the masses entertained and distracted. But this inequality had bred resentment, and Rome teetered on the brink of class conflict. The Senate, once a powerful body representing Rome's finest, was now a puppet of the elite class. Bribery, corruption, and violence became tools of political survival. Elections were no longer a choice between leaders but between factions backed by Rome's richest families. Senators prioritized policies that would benefit their patrons or line their pockets, passing laws favoring the elite, repealing those that threatened wealth, and using their power to crush reformers. The idea of the Senate as a check on power was a fantasy. In truth, it was a mechanism to protect and perpetuate the elite's dominance. With power concentrated in the hands of a few, it was inevitable that strongmen would rise to capitalize on Rome's fractured state. The first triumvirate, a coalition between Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar, was a brazen alliance that divided Rome among three of its most powerful men. Their partnership was rooted not in the ideals of the Republic, but in personal ambition and wealth. Rome became their private battlefield, and when they turned against each other, the Republic's institutions crumbled. The Republic was no longer a government but a stage for the ambitions of men who had no loyalty except to themselves. As civil war engulfed Rome, Julius Caesar emerged victorious, proclaiming himself dictator for life. He was hailed as a savior by some but condemned as a tyrant by others. His reign was a death blow to the Republic as he dismantled democratic institutions in favor of autocratic rule. The ideals of shared power and civic duty, which once defined Rome, had vanished. Rome had come full circle from monarchy to republic to autocracy, its original values trampled under the boot of wealth and ambition. Caesar's assassination only plunged Rome deeper into chaos, leading to more civil wars,